He had just finished microwaving a cup of noodles when the hologram blinked to life, floating above the dented metal counter like a ghost refusing to wait its turn. Jack Moran, long retired and longer forgotten, dropped his chopsticks midair as his niece's voice echoed through the tiny kitchen module. "Uncle Jack, are you coming to my birthday this time? It's okay if you can't. Dad says you're still saving the universe. But I saved you some cake anyway." Her smile froze mid-laugh before the feed distorted, cracked with static, then cut violently to a screaming sound, followed by an alien symbol burned into a wall with blood. Jack stood there motionless, the noodles dripping down his hand unnoticed as the recording ended with the cold stamp of a military boot crushing the child's stuffed toy. 1 second of silence passed. Then another. And then Jack laughed, not from joy, but from the kind of madness that lived beneath scars too deep for time to fade. The microwave dinged behind him like it had nothing to say about any of this. Jack moved like a machine awakening from sleep mode. His fingers flipped a switch under the floor panel, revealing a vault wrapped in old bloodstains and magnetic dust. The armor was still there, still whole, waiting. He hadn't touched it in 7 years. The helmet was matte black with 2 red slits like narrowed eyes, the kind you remember after nightmares. One by one, he locked the pieces onto his body. The last thing he slid into place was the Reaper mask. Not because he needed to hide, because the thing that came next wasn't human anymore. He didn't leave a note. He didn't pack a bag. He simply walked out of the shack, stepped onto the sulfur-blown plains of Arcturus III, and vanished into the storm without looking back. 2 days later, Earth Command intercepted an encrypted data packet that wasn't supposed to exist. The AI tried to trace it. It failed. The only decrypted phrase within it was a name the world had buried: Reaper Operation Awakened. They sent drones to the colony. The shack was there. The microwave was cold. The floor vault was open. But the rest of the cabin had been turned into a silent shrine, with 5 names scrawled in blood across the wall: Vaker, Zor, Ikor, Dracos, Thurn. Every one of them, high command generals of the Zarnathi Empire. Every one of them implicated in the unauthorized extermination of a human diplomatic unit, one Earth claimed had never existed. 5 days earlier, Jack's brother and his family had been stationed on a peacekeeping outpost near the border of Zarnathi space. Off the record, they were civilian liaisons helping finalize a trade and prisoner exchange. It wasn't a combat zone. It wasn't supposed to be dangerous. And yet, the evidence showed they were tied to poles, recorded, executed, and used as an example. No official declaration of war. No galactic hearing. Just a display of dominance. Jack's brother had once convinced him to retire from Earth's Ghost Division. Promise peace, family, normal life. Jack had laughed then too. He arrived at the black site on Titan Station without clearance, walked through 3 security zones, and appeared in front of Director Hask with 0 explanation. Hask spilled his coffee on his own boots. Jack didn't sit. He simply placed a microchip onto the director's desk and said one word: names. Hask looked at the chip, looked at the man who was supposed to be dead, and sighed like a funeral bell. Within hours, a covert brief was pulled from the archives. 5 Zarnathi generals. High value. Untouchable by diplomatic channels. Each protected by planetary defenses and rogue fleets. Jack didn't ask for backup. He only asked for one thing: deniability. If this went wrong, Earth would claim no knowledge of him. Hask agreed. And then he did something stupid. He asked Jack if he was doing this for revenge. Jack looked at him like a question that deserved no answer. Then he turned and walked away. Back on his ship, the Wraith's Spine, Jack activated his old loadout and scanned his neural sync interface. Everything was slower than it used to be. Not broken. Just buried under years of pretending to be someone else. The ship had dust in places he didn't know existed. The targeting AI had gone sarcastic with time, greeting him with "Hello, murder machine. You forgot to feed me for 2,538 days. Rebooting your guilt complex." Jack smirked. It was the first real expression he'd made since the video. Then he plotted his first course, Muldrak. Home to General Zor, the one known as the Flesh Sculptor. Muldrak wasn't listed on most public star maps anymore. It had been removed by order of the Zarnathi Ministry of Civil Order after repeated war crime accusations. But that didn't stop it from thriving in the shadows. Reaper's data showed Zor now ran a market where enhanced gladiators fought for sport, profit, and body parts. It would be loud, messy, but also perfect. Zor was proud of his atrocities. Proud enough to broadcast them. Jack only had to get close enough to ruin the show. As the raised spine blinked into warp, Jack leaned back in his chair. The red lighting of the cockpit reflected in his visor like twin fires in the dark. He whispered to himself, not as a prayer, but a sentence already carried out. You killed the wrong family. In the distant corner of Zarnathi space, General Vaker watched a disturbing trend rise on the shadow feeds. A human. Unconfirmed identity. Just a silhouette in black armor and a red visor. 2 known kills so far, both Zarnathi pirates with connections to the Flesh Sculptors cartel. Vaker stared at the footage silently. Then, for the first time in his career, he felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Something that no alien biology could explain. It felt like doom was coming, and it wore the face of a human ghost. The room chilled. He crushed the data pad in his claws and barked to his guards to increase defenses across all 5 sectors. He thought it was enough. He hadn't yet learned one simple truth about the man Earth once called Reaper. He doesn't come for peace. He comes for balance. And balance requires blood. The raised spine dropped out of warp like a ghost uncloaking in the middle of a battlefield. Muldrak's sulfuric atmosphere came into view through the cockpit, a swirling mess of yellow storms and molten rivers carving veins through the cracked landscape. The planet looked like a wound that refused to heal. Jack Moran, now fully locked into the Reaper persona, watched silently as his ship coasted into orbit, hidden from detection by an obsolete but highly illegal stealth system Earth had buried in the shadows of its Black Ops division. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. The flesh bazaar below pulsed with heat signatures, bioaugments, and artificially spliced organisms. It was less a city and more a tumor stretching across the crust. Reaper pulled a chip from his wrist compartment and slid it into the comms hub. A new identity activated. Name Varn Kesso. Occupation, genetic smuggler. Criminal record, real enough to pass scrutiny. Reputation, brutal, unhinged, and precisely the kind of filth Zor's empire welcomed. He docked on the outskirts, past the wall of body pits and auction stalls. No guard stopped him. No customs checks. Muldrak didn't believe in laws. It believed in coin and fear. Reaper had brought both. As he walked through the market, the scent of synthetic adrenaline and rotting bioclones filled the air. Gladiators, some human, most not, were displayed in reinforced cages, injected with combat drugs until their muscles twitched without command. A vendor tried to sell him a 9-eyed canine hybrid that responded to music instead of commands. Reaper didn't respond. He just kept moving, boots echoing against blood-streaked concrete as whispers followed him. Varn Kesso had never been here before, but the armor he wore and the way he walked made people believe he had. That was the trick. Belief was louder than history. Inside the auction dome, a crowd gathered around a circular stage surrounded by rising glass walls. Each wall displayed a live feed of the next fight. One of the announcers, a creature with 3 mouths and a voice like broken engines, welcomed the crowd with too much joy. Today's feature, it bellowed, is courtesy of General Zor himself. One of Earth's finest, illegally abducted, now about to face a bio-spliced predator engineered from 8 species. Place your bets. Cheers erupted. Reaper's eyes narrowed as the Earth soldier was dragged into the arena. Yum. Shaking. Unarmed. Clearly drugged. But not dead yet. That part was meant to entertain. General Zor sat in a raised throne above the dome, surrounded by a ring of pleasure drones and elite guards with laser halberds. His body was grotesque, morphed beyond anything remotely natural. 6 arms, pulsating with muscle. A jawline reinforced with carbon plating. And eyes, far too many eyes, each blinking in different rhythms. He didn't watch the fight. He watched the crowd watching him. Reaper spotted the sniper roost tucked beneath Zor's throne platform. A perfect vantage point. Sealed off. Only accessible from the back maintenance sector. Reaper filed it in his head and left. 2 hours later, Reaper walked into a side corridor labeled Maintenance Personnel Only. A bored, half-mutated guard blocked the path. Reaper didn't speak. He held up a forged pass, waited, then shot the guard through the knee with a silenced dart. As the guard dropped, Reaper stepped past him and entered the vent access crawlspace. It took 20 minutes of silent climbing through dust-coated ducts before he emerged in the back of the sniper chamber. A Zarnathi mercenary sat there, aiming a long-range disruptor rifle toward the dome, casually chewing something that smelled like fire and mold. Reaper crept up behind him, choked him unconscious, then took his place. His own weapon, a collapsible railgun folded into his back, now clicked into shape. The Earth soldier was barely alive now. The crowd roared as the hybrid creature stalked him, claws dripping, breath sizzling against the cold. Zor leaned forward, eager for the kill. Reaper aligned the shot. He didn't aim for the creature. He didn't aim for the soldier. He aimed for the secondary plasma generator just behind the arena's wall, an unguarded unit used to regulate shield polarity during broadcasts. The trigger clicked. The explosion was instant. The blast blew out the wall and sent both gladiators flying. Smoke and power surged into the air. The dome cracked in 3 places. Panic spread through the audience as the shielding systems failed. Reaper dropped the rifle, jumped from the sniper nest, and landed in the chaos below. He moved through the smoke like a ghost, bypassing fleeing civilians and security scrambling to make sense of it all. In under a minute he reached the throne platform. Zor was trying to retreat, guards at his side. But he didn't expect Reaper to arrive from the side staircase, emerging through the mist like a demon from a forgotten myth. The first 2 guards went down before they understood what happened. The third managed to swing his blade, but Reaper caught the shaft, snapped it, and drove it through the alien's own chest. Then he was face to face with Zor. Zor bellowed and lunged with 2 of his arms. Reaper dodged, slammed a concussion mine into Zor's lower abdomen, and dove away. The blast took out 3 more of Zor's limbs. Zor screamed, clawing at the remnants of his mechanical spine, and tried to crawl. Reaper followed him calmly, never rushing, until he stood over the crawling general. Reaper didn't speak until Zor turned over and spat blood at his boots. Then he removed his helmet just long enough for Zor to see his face. Jack Moran. The last face the general ever saw. You should have left them alone, Jack said quietly. Then he pressed his palm to Zor's chest and triggered the rail charge embedded in his gauntlet. The blast incinerated the general's torso and left a smoking crater in the throne. By the time the remaining guards arrived, Reaper had already disappeared. His signal blinked once from the atmosphere before vanishing entirely. Back aboard the Wraith's spine, Jack reviewed the footage he had just broadcasted to 6 black market networks. No explanation. No demands. Just the image of a general burned into ash, followed by a slow zoom onto 5 blood-scrawled names. 4 remained. In another corner of the galaxy, General Icor, the ice general of Ravan 7, watched the feed in silence. He didn't react. Didn't flinch. He simply ordered a planet-wide lockdown, raised the cryo-turrets, and summoned every private army under his command. And still, part of him knew. The man was already on his way. And this time, he wouldn't come quietly. Ask ChatGPT. The cold on Ravan 7 was not the kind that bit. It was the kind that chewed, gnawed, and whispered through bone like a curse older than language. The sky above was a static swirl of frost clouds and mechanical haze, kept artificially dim by planetary shields. General Icor's fortress, known only as the Hollow Bastion, rose out of the ice like the broken spine of a dead god. Towering, angular, laced with glowing veins of cryo-energy, it was more machine than base, an unyielding citadel built on the ashes of resistance. No ship landed here unless summoned. No signals came in unless cleared by command. And yet, in the middle of a snowstorm that hadn't let up in weeks, a sleek, black escape pod pierced the sky and smashed into the eastern quadrant with no identification, no beacon, and no known origin. Soldiers rushed to the impact site, rifles drawn, scanners active. What they found was a shattered capsule, partially melted by entry heat. Inside lay a single man, unconscious, scarred, and dressed in rags soaked with blood. He bore no armor, no insignia, only a data spike implanted in his neck and frostbitten lips whispering a single word: vengeance. Icor was informed immediately. He ordered the man taken to cell block 17 and to have his memory scanned. No executions, not yet. He wanted to know who sent him. What faction dared smuggle a body through his defense grid? He had the man chained in a zero-heat isolation chamber with observation drones, then left him there to rot for 2 cycles. But Jack Moran had not come to rot. He had come to bury. His body had been injected with a deep freeze suppressant and neural-slowing agent, his own design, crafted specifically to mimic cryoshock trauma. It fooled the medtechs. It fooled the scanners. It didn't fool the prisoners. On the 3rd cycle, the man in the cell next to him, a hunched humanoid with cybernetic ears, whispered, "I know who you are." Jack didn't respond. "I heard stories. Long time ago. About a man who vanished. They said he walked away with death in his hands. That man's coming here, right?" Jack turned his head. "You're looking at him." The man laughed so hard he coughed blood. Then he whispered back, "There's over 400 prisoners in this place. Give us a door. We'll give you a war." The plan unfolded quickly. The prison's power grid rotated every 9 hours to prevent escape attempts from adapting. Reaper mapped it through drone movement and floor vibrations. The neural sync implanted in his molar still worked, despite partial freezing. 1 bite. 1 shock. He did it during a sleep scan. The jolt restarted his suppressed body chemistry. His muscles tensed like loaded wires. The guards noticed too late. He broke free using a single dislocated arm and a steel fragment from his own restraints, killing the nearest guard by jamming it through his visor and triggering a neck artery spray. Blood painted the wall. Reaper smiled for the first time in days. He moved through the halls like a shadow on fire. Disarmed guards. Crushed security drones. Triggered the manual override with the dead man's hand. Cells unlocked one by one. Prisoners spilled out. No orders needed. No mercy given. It was chaos, but calculated chaos. Alarms blared. Icor screamed for full lockdown. But Jack had already rerouted the cryocore control to vent its overcharge directly into the air circulation vents. The temperature dropped another 20 degrees within minutes. His armor, smuggled piece by piece through garbage drones days before his arrival, waited for him in the waste chamber. He suited up in seconds. Now the fortress was a battlefield. Cryostorms outside. Riots inside. Soldiers panicked as their rifles froze over or shorted out. Jack moved through the carnage like a surgeon, identifying weak points, placing charges, making sure the path to Icor was both direct and unforgettable. He didn't want the general to die wondering. He wanted him to see it coming. Icor, meanwhile, activated the Bastion's core defense, a towering mech suit forged for deep void warfare, triple-jointed limbs, plasma blade fingers, railgun shoulders, and an inner temperature of -100 Celsius. He descended into the throne chamber, now exposed to the icy winds. A squad of loyalists formed a perimeter around him. He waited. Jack entered with a blast of wind, cloak frozen at the edges, visor reflecting the pale blue glow of the core above. His voice echoed through the empty metal as he walked forward. "Your war crimes didn't make you a god. They made you a name on a list." Icor stepped forward, voice booming. "You're just a myth Earth whispers to scare children. You should have stayed dead." Jack replied, "I was dead. You brought me back." Then they charged. The battle was savage. Jack dodged plasma slashes, ducked under rail fire, and retaliated with EMP pulses that staggered the mech's balance. But Icor's suit was a monster, built to tank nukes. Jack used terrain, grapple hooks, forced the mech into collisions with pillars. He pulled a molten shard from the broken reactor and stabbed it into Icor's knee joint, then triggered his own armor's overdrive mode, heating his fists enough to burn through the suit's outer plating. The fight ended with both of them in the cryocore chamber, surrounded by flooding coolant and sirens screaming through the metal bones of the fortress. Icor tried to retreat, bleeding and half exposed, dragging himself with one arm. Jack limped after him, ribs cracked, armor sparking. He tackled the general into the central coolant pipe, wrestled him under a burst valve, and held him there as frost crystals bloomed across his face. Jack whispered into his ear, "My niece died begging for her parents. You die choking on your own frozen breath." Then he let go. Icor's body shattered before it hit the ground. The fortress fell minutes later. Jack made it out just in time to board a prisoner transport ship now repurposed as an escape vessel. He patched his wounds while the freed prisoners cheered. One of them, the cybernetic-haired man from before, looked at him with awe. "What do we call you?" Jack stared out the window, watching the hollow bastion collapse into a frozen ruin. "You don't. You run. You tell them this isn't revenge. It's arithmetic." Back on the throne world, General Thurn watched the destruction of Ravon 7 in silent horror. Another name gone. Another fortress destroyed. 2 more left. He turned to Vaker, whose silence felt heavier than war drums. "What do we do?" he asked. Vaker didn't answer. He simply stood, stared at the blood-marked names glowing red on the wall, and muttered, "We should have killed him first. Now it's too late. He's doing what Earth wouldn't. He's rebalancing the scale." The jungle planet of Vaktar was alive in ways that mocked the silence of space. Every inch breathed, screamed, hissed, and pulsed with organic danger. The trees weren't just tall. They were ancient spires of bark and bone, some fused with alien metal and forgotten tech from wars that predated Earth's calendar. Luminous fog clung low to the forest floor, masking carnivorous plants and sentient moss. Insects the size of rifles danced between poisonous vines. Lightning cracked across the violet sky as if the clouds themselves were at war. But none of that mattered to Jack Moran. Reaper had come here for one reason. General Drakos, the ghost commander of the Zarnathi's intelligence corps. A shapeshifter. A liar. A shadow among shadows. And if the intel gathered from the frozen wreckage of Ravon 7 was true, Drakos now lived like a god among insurgent tribes, controlling them through fear and prophecy. Jack didn't need to expose the lie. He just needed to kill the liar. He landed deep in the southern hemisphere, far from any signal range. His ship cloaked itself behind a waterfall and activated a camouflage net. Then Jack stepped into the jungle, wrapped in his ghillie cloak, every movement calculated to match the rhythm of the planet's breath. He didn't come in loud. He came in like a ghost tired of resting. His footsteps left no prints. His weapons emitted no light. And when a flesh leech tried to crawl up his boot, it was incinerated by a pulse trap before it even latched. For hours he moved without contact. Then he found it. A totem tower made from bones, Zarnathi, human, and others unidentifiable, stacked in a spiral formation. At the top was a helmet. Human design. Cracked. Blood still caked inside. Drakos was sending messages. Jack followed the trail beyond the totem into a clearing. There, in the middle of a pulsating nest of tribal huts and glowing sap veins, stood the temple. It wasn't carved. It was grown. A living structure formed from symbiotic trees and hardened lava, shaped like a fang aimed at the stars. Sentinels patrolled the perimeter, adorned in bone armor and painted in tribal ink. But under the ink, Jack recognized the armor plating and communication nodes. Drakos had trained them, equipped them, turned them into a cult. And now the cult was expecting a prophet. Or a devil. Jack made his entrance during the Ascension Hour, when Drakos emerged in one of his stolen forms to speak to the tribes. He wore a human face this time. Female. Young. Eyes wide like innocence. Jack saw through it instantly. As the creature raised its arms and chanted in the old tongue, Jack stood from the shadows, aimed his rail bow, and fired a bolt that sliced through the illusion's shoulder. The crowd gasped. The false Draco stumbled, body flickering, transforming, losing stability. Jack walked into the light. "The Reaper is real," he said. "And he has questions." The crowd hesitated. Half of them dropped to their knees. The rest raised weapons. Jack expected as much. The first attacker came from the right, swinging a tribal blade laced with venom. Jack parried, spun, disarmed him, and sent him tumbling into a vine that devoured him in seconds. The others hesitated again. He tossed a smoke mine into the center of the formation, sending the entire courtyard into chaos. Under that cover, he moved straight toward Draco's, now shedding forms like snakeskin, revealing its true appearance, amorphous, tendril-based, with an unstable central core flickering through hues of energy. They fought without words. Reaper's blades sliced at shifting limbs. Draco's countered with illusions, mirages of Jack's dead brother, his niece, faces twisted into mockery. Jack ignored them all. He fought on instinct, through fire and blood, past hallucinations and memories laced with synthetic guilt. The battle tore through the temple walls, into the root chambers, where Dracos attempted to merge with the hive sap and regenerate. Jack activated his full suit's electrical purge and stepped into the goo without hesitation. Sparks danced across the roots as the sap ignited, boiling the false god from within. Dracos screamed. Not in pain. In confusion. As if unable to compute the possibility of death. Jack didn't let it finish. He shoved a volatile core detonator directly into the creature's primary mass, and whispered you saw their faces and still did it anyway. Then he walked away. The explosion tore the temple apart, sending shockwaves across the forest. Sap ignited. Trees caught fire. The jungle screamed back. The cult scattered. As Jack made his way back through the burning wilderness, he stumbled upon a small child hiding beneath the wreckage. Not alien. Human. Young boy. Malnourished. Wearing a tattered Earth Scout uniform. Jack approached. The boy didn't speak. Just held out a carved pendant. Reaper. That's what they called you. You're real. My dad said you'd never come. Jack knelt, took the pendant, and nodded once. I came too late. But I'm here now. He lifted the boy onto his shoulders and moved through the fire. Back aboard the Wraith's spine, Jack scanned the boy's pendant. It matched a missing persons file from over a year ago. The kid's parents had been peace envoys. Their ship was never recovered. Dracos must have kept the boy alive for leverage or prophecy. Jack left a coded message on the interstellar rescue net. No name. No signature. Just a location and medical data. Then he put the child into cryosleep for safe transport, and set course for the final hunt. Only 2 names remained. Thurn and Vaker. Jack's list was nearly complete. But as he reviewed the hacked data from Draco's core memories, something stood out. A face. Human. Earth uniform. Sitting in a diplomatic chamber with the Zarnathi High Command. Smiling. Laughing. Shaking hands as Jack's family data scrolled on a shared screen. Betrayal didn't come from one empire. It had help. Jack didn't react. He just saved the image. Then he loaded a new route. First Thurn. Then the traitor. Then Vaker. The final name. Somewhere in the depths of the Galactic Council's secret wing, the traitor reviewed the destruction of the Vaktar Temple and narrowed his eyes at the footage. The Reaper's face was never shown, but his work was unmistakable. He sent a message directly to Vaker. We have a problem. Vaker responded with silence, then a brief reply. No. We had a solution. We turned it into a ghost. Now that ghost is coming back. I want you to prepare for war. And if the Reaper reaches me, make sure you're not standing between us when he does. Ask ChatGPT. The Wraith's spine entered the outskirts of Thurn's planetary sector under the shadow of an artificial eclipse. The planet below was called Harkon 5, a desert world carved with fortresses and cloaked in holographic illusions that made entire cities appear where there were none. General Thurn had always been paranoid, even before the Reaper began eliminating his fellow warlords. Unlike the others who lived in arrogance and indulgence, Thurn built his empire on misinformation and surveillance. No walls were high enough. No towers tall enough. He trusted no one, not even his own species. His fortress was hidden not by strength, but by deception. And Jack Moran understood deception better than any of them. He didn't drop from orbit in a blaze of fire or crash into a battalion like he had before. This time, he slipped in through the back, disguised as a mercenary for hire recruited by one of the rogue intelligence networks Thurn sponsored. The data recovered from Dracos had given him just enough clearance codes and Eurocommand phrases to override basic entry systems. His armor was cloaked in digital mesh. His voice was scrambled. He posed as a smuggler named Barsivan, brought in to install upgraded jamming beacons. The fortress accepted him. Barely. They didn't know they had let in the last breath of judgment. Inside, the corridors pulsed with blue-lit code strips. Every wall was an interface, every floor a pressure sensor, every camera feeding directly to Thurn's private chamber. The man never left his command room, buried under 10 layers of security and flanked by drones that responded to thought rather than motion. Thurn trusted machines. Machines couldn't lie. Jack moved through the corridors like one of them, mimicking the patterns of real engineers, timing his movements to avoid scanner sweeps, memorizing guard routines that didn't involve sleep or meals because here, in Thurn's domain, even the sentinels were synthetic. He needed a different kind of disruption. One that machines couldn't predict. In the data center, Jack planted a neuropulse virus into the feedback loop that monitored emotional stability across the command network. It was subtle. A glitch that would slowly corrupt decision-making protocols in the AI command nodes. Then he uploaded footage from the Jungle Temple, edited to show Dracos naming Thurn as the weak link, the one who would fall next. It was a psychological strike. Within hours, the Fortress AI began rerouting power inefficiently. Patrols doubled in areas with no threat. Internal communications filled with doubt. Even the drones began to respond sluggishly, hesitating half a second longer than they should have. That was all Jack needed. He triggered the next phase by staging a mock betrayal. He let one of the tech officers see him accessing a forbidden console, then vanished before she could alert security. Her report triggered a lockdown. Thurn, watching from his chamber, demanded immediate containment and purging of any infiltrator. As guards scrambled to secure every level, Jack moved unseen through the ventilation shafts, his suit synced to mimic the fortress's thermal rhythm. He bypassed 2 laser grids, disabled a motion sensor with a looped feedback signal, and finally reached the vault-level corridor that led to Thurn's command deck. The door wouldn't open through hacking. It required a biometric key known only to Thurn. Jack had anticipated this. He backtracked to the AI core and used his pulse gauntlet to send a localized overload, triggering a 10-second reboot. In those 10 seconds, the command deck opened automatically as a failsafe to allow executive escape. Jack walked through before the doors sealed again. Inside, Thurn stood waiting, surrounded by hovering sentry drones and wearing a skin-tight interface suit lined with neural threads that lit up like nerves exposed to cold. He looked older than the files had shown. Pale. Thin. His fingers twitched constantly as if trying to type on keyboards that no longer existed. "You," Thurn whispered, not in fear, but with restrained fascination. "You made it through all that. You're not just revenge. You're evolution." Jack didn't respond. He simply stepped forward, gaze fixed, movement steady. Thurn raised a hand. The drones shifted into firing position. "You've already lost," he said. "The Council's been watching you. Earth has already buried your name again. Your vendetta is obsolete." Jack answered by hurling a magnetic grenade onto the nearest drone. The blast disrupted their coordination, causing 3 of them to slam into each other and explode in a shower of sparks. Thurn screamed and backed into a wall, triggering the defense system embedded in the chamber floor. Electric arcs danced across the tiles as automated turrets rose and fired pulse bursts. Jack darted between cover points, using the console terminals as shields, redirecting one of the arcs into the wall to short out the turret system. He advanced, disabling another drone with a shoulder-mounted ion dart. Thurn activated his last line of defense, an energy field projected directly from his suit, pulsing like liquid glass. He lunged forward, trying to use the suit's neural tendrils to latch onto Jack's mind. But Jack's suit had its own defense. The mental feedback loop bounced back into Thurn's cortex, frying the connection. Thurn staggered, nose bleeding, and reached for a hidden blade. Jack caught his arm mid-swing, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him against the wall. "Where's the traitor?" Jack asked, voice low and deadly. "The human who helped you." Thurn gasped. "I don't know his name. He never gave it. Only orders. Coordinates. You were the test. If you succeeded, he'd know humans couldn't be trusted. He wanted to prove Earth couldn't keep its ghosts buried." Jack tightened his grip. "The coordinates, now." Thurn smiled through bloody teeth. "Doesn't matter. He'll be gone by the time you get there." Jack snapped his wrist, let him fall, and activated his recorder. Thurn crawled toward the console. Jack pulled a plasma shard and drove it into the panel, sealing the doors, then ignited the core disruptor on Thurn's own suit and kicked him back into the center of the room. The explosion lit up the entire command chamber, blowing through the systems and wiping every last trace of Thurn's surveillance empire. Jack emerged from the smoke, suit scorched, but walking. He uploaded the stolen files to his ship, then accessed the hidden folder marked only with a symbol, an Earth flag split down the center. Inside were records of private meetings, off-the-books transactions, Earth signatures, and one clear image of the traitor. A face Jack knew. A man who had once stood beside his brother on Earth's own delegation board. A friend. A handler. An executioner in disguise. Jack returned to the race spine and plotted 2 coordinates. The first was for the traitor's private station in the neutral zone. The second was Vaker's throne world. He stared at the screen for a long time, eyes bloodshot, breath slow. The list was almost finished. But before he faced the Empire's head, he had to cut out the root. The one who made the deal. The one who signed the death order with a handshake. In the Galactic Embassy, the traitor stood before a mirror adjusting his ceremonial collar. He had received word that Thurn was dead. He expected the Reaper to come. What he didn't expect was for Jack to already be inside the room, watching, waiting, just beyond the reflection. He blinked. The reflection didn't. And then it stepped forward. The sound of glass shattering was the only warning the traitor got. By the time he spun around, Jack was already there, half shadow, half fury, eyes glowing faintly behind the visor. There was no speech, no announcement, no gloating. Jack simply struck, open-palmed, across the man's jaw, hard enough to send him crashing into the diplomatic table. Documents scattered like paper tombstones. The man groaned, reaching for the emergency beacon beneath the desk, but Jack kicked the console aside and dragged him upright by the collar. This man had once been his handler, had once shared drinks with his brother, had held Jack's niece in his arms during her first birthday. He had smiled through every lie, every briefing, every mission. And then he had signed the authorization to deploy Jack's family as expendable observers to Zarnathi space under the guise of a goodwill initiative. No backup, no escorts, no mention in official records. Just names sent to be erased, to keep peace with monsters. Jack had seen the signature. It was burned into his mind like a scar across time. The traitor begged at first. Not for forgiveness. For understanding. He claimed the Council forced him. That Earth was breaking under pressure. That war would have cost billions. That the Reaper's family was a necessary sacrifice. He spoke quickly, hands trembling, voice rising with every excuse. Jack didn't say a word. He just played a recording from the stolen files, an audio log of the traitor laughing over drinks with General Vaker, discussing how humans were predictable, how the fear of death could be monetized, how Jack would probably never find out. The man stopped speaking after that. He just slumped in Jack's grip like a marionette with no strings. Jack released him without ceremony. The man dropped to his knees. Jack turned away and walked toward the exit. But just before leaving, he activated a small drone hovering behind him. The drone uploaded the files to every independent galactic channel, exposing the betrayal, the collusion, the erasure of truth. Earth's flag would survive. But its silence would not. Jack stepped into the corridor as alarms sounded and diplomatic guards rushed in to arrest the traitor, not for treason, but because the world now knew. The truth had teeth, and he had just bared them to the stars. Then he turned to the final name. Vaker's throne world was a fortress planet known as Garanak, once a holy site, now a spire of iron, carved by orbital lasers and built around a pulsating planetary core. It hovered in the void like a god's heartbeat, thundering with war fleets and surveillance webs. Jack didn't arrive through stealth this time. He announced his entry by ramming the Wraith's spine into the planet's upper defense station, detonating its fusion core, and free-falling in an emergency pod straight through the lower atmosphere. He landed hard, smoke trailing behind him, his armor seared from the entry burn, weapons already drawn. The throne city welcomed him with fire. Drones swarmed first. Then the ground troops. Then the elite guard. Jack moved through them like a storm in silence. No speeches. No mercy. Each step was earned with blood. Each breath followed by another fallen body. Vaker watched it all from his obsidian tower, eyes unblinking, claws resting on the armrests of his throne. His generals were gone. His allies dead. His traitors exposed. The Reaper had survived everything thrown at him, and now he was ascending the final staircase. By the time Jack reached the Citadel's inner gate, he was limping, his suit cracked, his gauntlet shorting with each punch. But his eyes never lost their focus. The final door opened with a hiss of steam and old metal. Inside was a throne room surrounded by molten walls, runes carved in forgotten dialects, and a massive window revealing the planet's unstable core. Vaker rose from his throne without a word. He had discarded his ceremonial armor. He stood bare, claws exposed, veins glowing with combat serum. His mouth opened, and for the first time, he spoke to Jack not as a conqueror, but as a monster who believed his evil was justified. Your species trades vengeance like currency. But we conquer for survival. Your niece? Your family? They were never targets. They were examples. Tools. Sacrifices to teach your world fear. You should be thanking me. I made you a legend. Jack replied without pause. You made me a grave. He raised his weapon. Vaker lunged. The clash was titanic. Claws against steel. Blades against bone. Each strike echoed like thunder in the hollow core of the world. Vaker was faster than any of the others. Stronger. He knocked Jack through pillars, shredded his cloak, broke part of his shoulder plate. But Jack endured. He always endured. He countered with precision, with pain, with the weight of memory. He used the training that had made him Earth's final solution, and with it, turned the battle from survival into execution. They fought across the throne room, into the reactor bridge, then back through the broken skylight. The sky bled fire as planetary defense systems malfunctioned from the impact of the Wraith's crash. Finally, Jack drove Vaker through the central platform, slamming him into the floor, cracking the runes beneath them. Vaker gasped, tried to rise, but Jack pinned him down, activated his internal audio feed, and played the last message from his niece. Her voice trembled with excitement as she spoke about her birthday, how she hoped Jack would come, how she missed him. Vaker thrashed, but Jack held him. As the message ended, Jack looked into his eyes and whispered one final sentence. She had cake for me. You gave her fire. Then he drew his final blade and drove it straight through Vaker's heart. The alien convulsed once, eyes wide with something that might have been fear or regret, then fell still. Jack stood slowly, breath heaving, blood leaking into his visor. He looked at the corpse for a moment, then turned and walked to the edge of the throne room. Below, the citadel burned. Above, warships retreated without orders. The Empire had been decapitated. The Reaper's work was done. He didn't stay. He left before the diplomats arrived, before the media could swarm, before Earth could decide whether to call him a hero or a liability. The Wraith's spine, though damaged, still flew. Jack left Garanak behind and vanished into the stars. No destination. No name. Just a whisper carried across systems, of a man in black armor who came like death itself, not for glory, not for orders, but for balance. Galactic myths would grow. Some would say he was killed in the final battle. Others would swear he lived still, appearing wherever justice broke down, wherever systems forgot the value of life. But only one message remained across every world he touched, etched in the ruins, sprayed across walls, whispered in the dark. The Reaper doesn't knock. He just finishes the list.